what we first of all recommended was that the model of devolution should move from the reserve powers model to the conferred powers model. We thought that was fundamentally important. Then we made various recommendations about for powers to move from London to Cardiff. We set all this in the context of principles, and coherence and clarity and accountability were very important principles among these. So we recommended that there should be a much more coherent transport policy with powers over rail, ports, buses, taxis coming to Cardiff. We recommended that there should be an alignment of the administrative boundary with the boundary for water responsibility, and recommended that there should be a higher level of consenting powers in respect of electricity generation. Made some proposals for changes on broadcasting, and we also, I suppose the most important area where we're talking about powers changing was in policing and justice. On policing and justice, we call for the devolution of policing, devolution of the youth justice system. We see a persuasive case for the devolution of prisons and probation, and we, however, don't see at present a case for the devolution of the criminal and civil law, but we think that the whole area of justice needs a further review, which we recommend by 2025. So those are the powers, but we also, I think a very important theme for the report is better working between London and Cardiff, a more clear delineation of powers, a more clear accountability between London and Cardiff, more formalism in the relationship, better working together. And with the accountability, we see scrutiny as important. That's why we recommend an increase in the number of members of the National Assembly for Wales to do the job of scrutiny better, because with scrutiny becomes more efficient government. So that's a sort of thumbnail sketch of 61 recommendations in a minute and a half, but there's a lot more in the report.
There's been a lot of attention on the reserve powers model recommendation, and I think that you stated that the only evidence you received against it was from Westminster. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Well, we didn't actually receive any evidence against it from Westminster, but the Secretary of State for Wales spoke at the Peerhead a couple of months ago, and he set out some arguments for the retention of the conferred powers model. What we tried to do in the report, though, was using both those arguments and other arguments that came from other sources. We set out arguments in favour of the conferred powers model as well as the arguments against. But you're right that the evidence was was exclusively in favour of the reserve powers model. Indeed, the UK government evidence didn't refer to the conferred powers model, simply said that, didn't argue in favour of the conferred powers model, simply said that they didn't see any reason to change the current system.
And in terms of the devolution of policing and criminal justice, a lot of people have said that the arguments for devolving policing are largely ideological. Do you think that you furthered the case for the devolution of policing by gathering more evidence for it?
I don't think we don't see it as an ideological argument for the devolution of policing. It's really seen as much more as an efficiency argument. The way in which so many services are delivered at a local level already in Wales means it's much more coherent for policing to be delivered at a local level as well. Now, it's important to stress that we're not talking about doing anything which would inhibit the way in which police forces cooperate across the board. Of course they've got to carry on doing that. Of course criminals move from Gloucestershire to Monmouthshire, and there shouldn't be any barrier between the effective cooperation between the police forces. But we think that let's take something like substance abuse. Substance abuse is tackled by education authorities, is tackled by social services departments, and is tackled by the police. And all of those things coming under the Welsh Government makes sense. There's also an accountability argument because of the financing of the police. The majority of the financing of the police comes either from precepts on local taxpayers or from the Welsh Government. It doesn't come from the Home Office. So there's an accountability argument for the police being devolved.
And you sketched out a 10-year plan for the devolution of criminal justice and the justice system. Do you think that 10 years is the right timescale?
Well, we had some debate in the Commission about this. We thought that it should be done in a period which people could understand. 10 years is not an awfully long time if you think how how far we've moved in 10 years in Wales in terms of devolution in general. We didn't set out a plan over those 10 years. We simply said that we believed that some things could be done straight away, like the devolution of policing, the devolution of the youth justice system. We thought that more work needed to be done looking at the practical issues of devolution of things like prisons. Clearly, there's some real practical issues there that have to be settled. The debate about whether Wales should have the power to make separate civil or criminal law is something which hasn't been well advanced yet. We set out some arguments which suggest that it's not something that need necessarily frighten people, but those arguments need to be had, and people need to debate more widely those questions, and we felt that that could be done over that period of 10 years. But we very importantly say that that further work should be done and its recommendations implemented by 2025.
Great. And what are your reflections on how people have reacted to the Silk Commission and its second report in particular?
Well, people have been pretty favourable. I mean, we've had people who've said that we've gone too far, True Wales, or we've had people like Plaid Cymru who've said we haven't gone far enough, or we haven't had enough urgency in what we've done. It's probably a very good thing to have criticisms of what we've done now, and we also hope that we're enlivening a debate. I mentioned earlier teachers' pay, where we recommended that teachers' pay should be devolved. Well, there's going to be a debate about that. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I'm entirely happy that we may not have said the last word on some of these issues, but that there is we've stimulated a debate which will come to some conclusions about it.